Good afternoon and welcome to the final day of Gaborone Book Festival 2021. Gaborone Book Festival 2021. My name is Huise Kwada and I'm the moderator for today's first session with Tshepo Moyo and Botho Lejowa. Tshepo will be talking about her chapbook titled Becoming, and Botho Lejowa will be talking about her book titled Meetings with Death. Thank you so much to our sponsors, the Institute of Development Management, for helping us make Gaborone Book Festival 2021 possible. You can follow our social media platforms. On Twitter, we are at Gabs Book Fest. On Facebook, we're Gaborone Book Festival. And on Instagram, we're Gaborone Book Festival as well. The official hashtags for this year's Gaborone Book Fest is hashtag Arebaling, hashtag GBF21. And we're going to get straight into it. Like I said, we're going to be talking to Botho, who has written this book, Meetings with Death. And Botho, could you please introduce yourself and um, tell us about your book? Read from the book and then tell us about it.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Botho Lejowa. I'm a writer. Meetings with Death is my second fantasy novel that I've published, so I'm super excited about it. It was published this year. It's basically about a girl from Southern Africa who is able to see death, and it really follows the story about how that kind of power puts her in danger and she's trying to fight for her life, basically. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to read from the book. Huizi wanted me to read this part, so let me just. Being in your realm as a human being is vastly different from being there as a supernatural being. I'm wired to feel things different. I feel when people are near death. There's a million me's in your realm right now collecting souls. I've existed too long in a world where my reality is meeting people at the worst moment of their lives. Rarely is death a peaceful experience for humans. My life as a supernatural has stretched out into nothing but grief, darkness, and pain until you. Until me, huh? Yeah, you saw me. He turned those eyes on me again. Galaxies swirled in them, and I saw sadness in its entirety. I laced my fingers through his, pressing my palm against his. I understood the pain of enduring life invisible. I knew what it felt like when Vikili looked at me. It was a freedom I hadn't known I needed. Why can't I see you? He turned away. Something in those eyes told me he was sorry for what was coming. You will either be my replacement or something else entirely. That's
Thank you so
an
much.
excerpt. um,
Thank you so much, Botho. I read Meetings with Death recently, and I really enjoyed the book. Spirituality, magic, taboo, rituals are like themes that go across the book. And I'm not gonna lie, since reading it,
yeah.
I went to bus rank this week, and I've been looking at some of those stalls weirdly, right? And there's in the book there's an exclusive bar that only people who are supernatural beings can see and have
Yeah.
access to. And low key, I want to be part of the club too. I want to
Right?
meet
It's
them.
so cool.
Um, and Tsepo's chapbook Becoming was released last year. But it's a new book, and I would like you to introduce yourself, Tsepo, and talk about your book as well as read us my favorite poem from the book.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Tshepo, and I wrote a chapbook called Becoming, and it's a collection of poetry just to introduce myself as a poet to the reader, and it's based on life. Life as a young woman, living and growing up in Botswana and the experiences that I've had. It's a very personal book. It's a very vulnerable book, and I think people who have read it will say to you that when you read it, you tend to feel like it speaks to your inner child. Um, when they asked me to read a poem, she asks me to read it every time. it's a it's a favorite poem of mine, and so I'm gonna go ahead and read it. It's called "To You." To you, I wish I hadn't told you secrets about myself, like that one about how sometimes after a really long day I run a shower just so I can cry. I should not have scribbled my weaknesses on a piece of paper, folded them 16 times, and asked you to hold on to it for me. You should have never heard me say, sometimes I don't believe in myself, and I believe in you, should not have come forward to me. I should not have made a home out of you. I should not have walked into you, thrown off my shoes, taken off my pants and bra, and settled on your lap and watched a rerun of Law and Order. You should not have seen the woman I am on dark, cold nights. No one should ever meet me when I'm not poet, writer, and superhero. No one should ever see what I look like without a coat of arrogance. And I shouldn't have worn your faith in me as a coat of armor. But the way you say, you're beautiful, must be the same way God said, let there be light. And there was light. More like a command and less like a compliment. And the way you kiss me must be the same way God breathed the breath of life and man became a living soul. So maybe I am a woman of faith. To me. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. How does anyone believe in the miracle of birth as sorrowful? We need a God whose pelvic bones know how to stretch for living souls. We need the kind of God that knows how to break. I need the kind of God that knows loss. I need the kind of God that knows. I need the kind of God. I need the kind of God. I am a God. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tshepo.
Wow, that was gorgeous.
It's a beautiful poem, and I like that poem, especially since I've heard it like said out loud by Tshepo how you wanted to be read. It sounds so different from when you read it. And I guess that's one thing that I appreciate about Becoming and why I can't wait for it. Hopefully one day to be an audiobook.
I'm sorry, wait, could you raise your voice a bit? There's a little bit of static on your end.
Oh,
But
is there static as well on your end, Botho?
No, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
So Tshepo, your acknowledgements start out with the sentence, a thank you to the amazing Black women in my life who continue to prove that the best way to experience love is from a Black woman. And this is a theme, love, life, and loss that remain that constant in the book in all the poems, which is why I believe every young woman should read these poems. Could you please tell us how Becoming came to be? How did you write this book and how did you put it together?
So Becoming is my first offering. It's my first book, and it's been, I don't want to say it's been in the works for like a decade, but it's been in the works for a decade. It's like I said, it's an introduction to me as a poet, and therefore I've picked poems from me writing since I was about 15 years old. I think the oldest, I've said before, the oldest poem in here is literally 10 years old. And so it's been a collection of work throughout the past 10 years. And then me going through all that work and deciding, okay, these are the poems that I feel represent me as an individual, firstly, and secondly, represent me um, as a writer, right? Um, yes, the book is dedicated to the women who in my life have continued to prove to me that womanhood is the best place to be. And it can definitely be a very uncomfortable space. I completely understand, because the world is not kind to women, right? Um, and so I always say to people, I feel like womanhood is like both a soft and hard place, and you're just there in the middle, kind of like vibing, you know. And for me, my experience of life has always been that I have been loved and protected by women, right? And it's probably people are probably like, what do you mean? Because you go through life having all men and women and everybody. But in my experiences as a young woman, and coming into myself and realizing that the world is not as kind to women as I thought it was, you know, because when you're a child, you don't see these things. But as you get older, you start to see all the spaces in which being a woman puts you in a weird, like, puts you at risk, puts you in danger. And for me, those spaces have been easily navigated by women protecting me, women taking care of me, women teaching me, women speaking up for me, you know, and that's it. Like, that's literally why I felt the need to dedicate this book to women, particularly Black women, because I mean, I do know a couple of white women. I have friends with a couple of white women, usually older white women. Um, but majority of my life has been as a Black woman living in a world where my life is consistently filled with Black women, and that's been my experience.
Oh, thank you for that. I would also and agree, right? This is why on this panel it's Black women, and I'm so happy to see who I'll be hosting, because it's two Black Botswana young women who are writing and claiming their space in writing books and getting published. And I don't see enough books by us that we can relate to. Um, and any good book, I think, by a young black Motswana woman is welcome. And I also would like to know, Becoming isn't a big book. It isn't a thick book, which I like, but I also want to know how did you choose the poems that made it into Becoming, that made it into your introduction to becoming a published poet?
Yeah. It was difficult. I think generally, like, summarizing yourself in exactly, yeah, in exactly 35 pages. I think it might be a little bit more, but it's about 40 pages, and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how I did it, guys. I'm really trying to think. Like, I think for me, the books that were very important for me to pick, where I mean, the poems that were important for me to pick were poems that I felt I didn't want this to be a sad book. That was one thing, and I wanted growth to be visible in it, and I think that's why I ended up settling on the name Becoming. Um, I wanted growth to be visible in it. And I think when you read it, you really do see that transition. Like, you see the poetry that's very unsure of itself, that's very elementary, that's very, is this even a poem? And then you see the poetry that has like depth and has layers to it, and that shows sureness in itself, and that shows like becoming more secure in yourself. And I think generally that's what I was going for when I was picking the book, like picking the poems. I didn't want perfection. I wasn't looking for perfection. I don't think this is the most perfect work that will come out of me. I'm certain I will write another book because this is this is not perfection for me, it's not the best thing that I could ever put together. And for me, I wanted my introductory book to be something that says to people, listen, I am not perfect, and I am not always sure of myself, and I am vulnerable, and I can be vulnerable with with my audience and with myself. And yeah, that's basically how I picked, I think. I hope I answered you.
Thank you. You did. You answered it so well. Thank you so much. Now, Botho, unlike Tshepo, this was your second book.
Yes.
Please share with us how Meetings with Death came to be, how you wrote it, what kind of research did you do? That's a question I saw on your Instagram the other day. What kind of research went into writing this book and writing these characters in a way that feels real, that definitely made me want to be part of the club and interested in the things that happen on the other side. Guys, I'm not even joking. Hey, since I finished this book last night, it was very windy, and I was just like, yo, maybe people are transporting someone who we shouldn't be, and this isn't a distraction. what, what kind of work went into writing Meetings with Death?
um, you know what? Meetings with Death is so vastly different from my first book. I think with my first book, I was still pretty much green. I was still a kid. I mean, like it's very very different. In the sense that I I went into it specifically with the idea that we don't really have that much representation as Southern Africans in the fantasy genre. So, like, if you look at fantasy, African fantasy, it's pretty much north up there. We're taking, like, the inspiration from their cultures, from their folklore, from their beliefs and stuff like that. And they have a multitude of them. And so we know them. We know about Osan. We know about all of those gods that they have. But we really don't know anything about ours specifically in Southern Africa. And I thought, like, that's really such a painful thing because I think we have amazing things to offer. Um, people believe in badimo, people believe in gore go aloiwa, gore, you can be protected and stuff like that. And that's really where it came from. Like, that's how I started with it. Really, I just wanted representation from our perspective in the fantasy genre. As far as the research went into it, it was just a lot of talking to people about their experiences with premonitions. Like, sorry, I'm a little bit distracted by the sound in the background. It was just talking to people about their experiences with premonitions, because that's what we have. Rela Batswana, we well, not just Batswana, Southern Africans will have a dream about something and we'll know instantly where something bad is coming. Or mototlawa, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I've never fallen before, I don't fall, and every time I do fall something bad happens or somebody dies. And we have all of those weird things that happen to us individually, and basically that's what the research entailed. I was just talking to people about how do you know something bad is coming in your life, and those are the things that came up. And I didn't use all of them, but most of them are in the book.
Yes, and one thing I really enjoyed about the book actually is how it wasn't just based in Botswana. It included South Africa, Zimbabwe, a little bit of Namibia, and it was refreshing, right? To think of how, because for me always Kanzaholoiwa and the other side of life, the things that regular people can't see. I've always thought about them just as here. Oloiwa ha, moloi, motho itswe le moloi. But like just confined to a very local point of view, and I enjoyed thinking about how probably the experts, there's someone even within that world, the experts, there's a council, there's the people who are connected towards your what do they call it, a network, right? Where you can reference if you're unsure about something, if you need help with something. And yeah, I liked that as well. The idea that it's not as simple and it's not evil, and sometimes it is evil. There's an evil side of it, but it's not. It's deeper than most people get to do and get to experience. And yeah, thank you so much for writing this book. I don't think I'm going to get over it anytime soon. Um, so I read and found out that you're a fellow of the African Writers Trust Publishing Fellowship Program 2020, and also a winner of the 2020 Publishing Fellowship Program grant. Please tell us about that. Tell us about joining those programs
I'm
and
so sorry.
how
I made it back. I'm sorry about that.
you made a what?
I was saying I made it back. I got kicked out of the
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
What's the last thing you heard me say?
You were talking about how you're glad
I'm
that
glad there was a selection.
no, you're glad that there was more than one country involved in the book.
Mm. Yes, I enjoyed that part very much. That there are experts across the region that you can reference and stuff. I was on to the next part of the conversation. You are a fellow of
Mhm.
the African Writers Trust Publishing Fellowship Program 2020, and you
Yes,
also
I
won the
am.
2020 Publishing Fellowship Program grant. Please tell us
Yeah.
about that. Tell us about what role these platforms played in your writing and your publishing of meetings with death.
Man, shout out to African Writers Trust. Those are my people. Um, I applied for their fellowship program, their publishing fellowship program, and after the program, they gave us an opportunity to apply for their fund, for their trust. I mean, for their publishing grant, and I did, and then I won it, and that in itself was such an amazing thing for me because it gave me so much. It was just like a nod, like, yes, girl, yes, you're actually quite good with this, and we trust you enough to give you money to go and publish your book, like, so you can write.
Yes.
That was really amazing for me because, like, it's not like they knew me beforehand, before the program and anything. They just went off of my application and off of my writing ability, and it was really, really self-affirming. And also, with the first book that I published, it was with a publisher. So this was the first time I was doing like self-publishing, and it was like intense. I was like, I had to like get a structural editor, get a copy editor, and those experiences were so amazing. They did so much for my writing because I was just like, when somebody is coming in looking at your book from one particular angle, the input that they have and the way that they can direct you into writing is just so amazing. If you like, I used to publish meetings with death every time I'd finish a chapter on my blog, and like, after like working with the editors, the copy editors and everything, like, it's so vast. Well, it's not vastly different, it's basically the same, but I feel like even my writing now has changed, and I'm like so incredibly grateful for the opportunity that African writers Trust gave me, because it just exposed me to all of these amazing people in the industry in Africa. And now I'm part of that. So when I won the money, it allowed me to self-publish, and I did all of those things. Most of my money went into like the editing and then the printing. I used a publishing company in South Africa. But generally speaking, I think I definitely prefer the self-publishing over the traditional printing. If only I didn't have to do my own marketing.
That's that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because Tshepo is also self-published.
Hmm.
Tshepo, can you join in and let us know how your self-publishing process went?
I agree with Botho. If only I didn't have to do my own marketing. That's the most difficult part of it. I just want to write the book and then, just move on. And then tell me where to be when to talk about the book. But I I had to self-publish from my own finances. Shout out to my mom. She's been helping me. And like Botho, I also had to get an editor. And my first experience was completely different. And I really like that she touched on how she ended up using a publishing house in South Africa. So I could not afford to use somebody in South Africa. And so I sourced out a local publishing house that had advertised that they would be able to do the editing for me and the layout and the cover and all of that. And honestly, it was not a fun experience. I was incredibly disappointed. And I generally am one of those people who believes in supporting local. So, for example, my book right now is only available on BW platforms. It can be shipped internationally, but the platforms that I'm using are Botswana based marketplaces. And that was a very intentional decision for me. And so deciding to use a local publisher was also an intentional decision for me, but I can be honest and say to you that I was not happy. I remember when the day when I finally got like physical copies of the book, I literally could not be excited about it because I had been fighting with this person back and forth for so long that by the time the books came, I was just like, oh, thank God this is done. And then I had to go through the process of a final copy, and I was like, this does not look like something I'm happy and proud of. And so I had to get a copy editor again to go through it again. And that was fun. She was brilliant to work with. She's actually a friend of mine. Her name is Prudence. I regretted not asking her the first time. And my experience with that publishing house actually has inspired me and Prudence and another friend of ours to consider going into publishing, because we just realized, like going through that process with my book, that locally we don't have that many alternatives, and it might be uncomfortable for people to hear that, but I do see a few publishing houses come up, and hopefully that's going to change things. But it's just been it there's a gap, like how you were saying, Hoiti, earlier, that reading books from Southern Africa is so difficult, like just getting them. And that's just Southern Africa in general. But once we go into Botswana, like majority of the books are not even like, we're not getting a lot of poetry books. We're not getting a lot of like fantasy fiction like Botho has written. Like there's just a huge gap. We're getting a lot of like self-help and religious books that are coming out of Botswana. And so there's a huge gap in access to publishing and how people can go about it. And it's something that we really need to start having a conversation about. Like, how do we get more Botswana published? And because publishing is expensive, I'm sure Buttu will tell you. It is just like,
Yeah. It's
you're
crazy
just like,
expensive.
But at the end of the day, like, you want to pay people their worth, right? Like, you want to pay the person who's going to cover your book. You want to pay your editor. You want to pay all the editors.
Yeah.
And then there's the marketing. Like, we start to have conversations about the difficulty of marketing. Like, I don't know how Botho's going about it, but like, majority of my marketing has been social media. And I have also been going into a little bit into press, but like, also I only have access to like local press. The other day I was in conversation with a possible distributor. And they were like, listen, I just Googled your book and it's literally like, internationally, I can only find it on Skymart. And so that means that majority of the people who are buying my book are either based in Botswana, who walk into a Mamuntle store and see it and like, oh, let me buy the book, or majority of them are actually people who are within my social network and my social media reach. And that's kind of like, I want to do better. I would like to get it out there more. I want more people to see it, but it's expensive.
Yeah, it really is. But I think one of the things that I've learned is that it's so important to have a network outside of Botswana. I mean, yes, I am pro Botswana all the way. Like, that's why
Yeah.
my book is, based on our things, and I will always support Botswana. But also, I believe that it's important to increase your network to other people out there, so that they also, by word of mouth, by just virtue of knowing you, spread news about your book. That thing is so important. I think, yeah, with the first one, I was like so shy about people getting to know me and stuff like that, because I'm extremely introverted, and I just really didn't understand why it was necessary for people to know about the author. Because
I
like,
feel you.
what's that about? Just read the book, bruh, and leave me out of it. But people are interested. People, they'll read the book, and especially for something like this that feels so much like home, that is so relatable. And it's also such an amazing thing for people to be able to see, me, Ghana, I went to primary school in Little City Primary School, Nikeja Magunya ko Popini, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, that girl did that. That's important. But like, it's so important for you to like take it out there to, like, other people, other countries, and they can champion you as well. And then all of a sudden, you're doing less of the grunt work, because they're saying your names in rooms that you didn't even know existed. And I
Right.
think that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. I started this writers development group, well, foundation really. It's called
Mm-hmm.
Write Me Free, and the intention with that is that I want to be able to plug, writers into these networks, writers from home into these networks. I want to be able to say, okay, no, I've developed the writing industry malapeng. I've given these people the same kind of opportunities that I found by mistake, by the grace of God. But now, it's there. It's an intentional thing. So I'm really excited about what Tshepo is saying about, going into publishing and creating these opportunities for us, because that's amazing. I'd rather pay, Tshepo all the money that I paid the company in South Africa.
Right. If the
Yeah,
option is
yeah.
there,
If the
I
option
think
is
we
there and it's great.
I think all of us would rather be in that situation where we can support, basically, just for our literary arts to grow, right? And on all the levels, like from everybody from book cover designers to editors
Hmm.
to publishers to marketers. We need people who be managing me and Botho.
For real, please,
you know,
please DM us.
we need those people to,
Hopefully,
because it yeah. Go
guys,
ahead, Hoyte.
we need to wrap up soon. But this conversation was amazing, and I'm hoping with your second book, Tshepo, and your next book, Botho, which low key I'm hoping tells Anna's love story now. I mean, Anna's love story to win, right? These platforms and these networks will be there, and you'll all get better support. Just to wrap things up, could you please each tell us one book that you have read this year that is your favorite or that you'd recommend everybody to read, as well as share how people can reach you, your social media platforms. Um, yes, anyone can start. Tshepo.
Okay. Okay, the first book. So I've read 25 books this year, maybe 27, somewhere there. But the first book that popped into my mind, I don't know if it's my favorite, but the first one that popped into my mind was Girl, Woman, Other. I've completely forgotten the author's name. But I really loved that book. It's incredibly well written. It's just brilliant. Love it. And then my socials. So on Facebook, I am Tshepo Jamela Moyo. I think there's a page, guys. Like the page. And then on Twitter, I am the Joy Scribbles, THE Joy Scribbles. Okay. And on Instagram, I am Tej underscore the underscore joy. And that is how you can get a hold of me. Oh, and then
Thank
the
you.
book is available at Sky Mart and Mamuntle pop-up store in Molapo Crossing, and it retails for 150 pula. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Tepo, while Botho talks, could you please bless us with one more reading from Becoming?
Okay, I'm gonna
And
pick a
yeah,
short one because we're out of
at the
time.
end, yeah, at the end after Botho speaks. Botho.
Okay, it's my turn. Sorry. I was literally waiting for her to go. I was like, ah, I like her poems. Yes, how you can reach me. On Facebook, there's a page as well, Botho Lejowa. Or is it Botho Rights? I'm not sure. One of those two. And on Twitter, it's also Botho Rights. And then on Instagram, it's Botho Lejowa. And then there's another one that's Botho Rights, but that's basically, poetry, sort of prose situations. But yeah, that's how you can reach me. Um, what have I read? Man, we've read so many books with my book club. Shout out Renee and Bame. Um, one book that we just recently read and it literally just devastated me. It broke my heart. It was about the Palestine. I've forgotten the name now. Like it's literally. I said I'd never read it again. Maybe that's why I've forgotten it. But it's just written by Ah, Ahmed, Renee are going to be so mad that I forgot the book, but I'll let you guys know in my socials. Yeah, it was an amazing book, and you can get my book Meetings with Death on any Amazon platform. If on Kindle, if you're a Kindle reader, if you're an ebook reader. So yeah, that's where you can get it. It's also at a bookstore in at Airport Junction. And yeah, that's where you can get it. And also, if you want a signed one, you can just hit me up on my socials, and I can get it to you. And it retails for 180.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I'm going to close off this live and then um, Tapa can read her poem. So thank you so much, everybody who has been listening and watching and commenting on our discussion today on our social media platforms. Thank you for joining. There are 3 more sessions to go before the Gaborone Book Festival lineup is done for the day and done for the year. You can, as I said before, find us on our social media platforms. On Twitter, we're at Gabs Fest, sorry, Gabs Book Fest, and on Instagram and Facebook, we're at Gaborone Book Festival. Please continue using our official hashtags, hashtag Arebaling and hashtag um, GBF21. Thank you so much to our sponsors again, the Institute of Development Management, for helping us host Gaborone Book Festival 2021, Lekamoso. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining again. Tshepo can read her poem and that's it. And then we wait for the next sessions, the next 3 sessions coming up.
When I was 5, my mother told me to punch till I drew blood. I didn't get why she was so mad. When I was 12, a man said I looked sexy in shorts. I stopped wearing shorts. Or playing outside, I closed my legs. I sat like a lady. I wear shorts now. I walk at night. I drink tequila and I reject nice guys. Someone told me I was asking for it. I remembered then. My mother said, when a boy tells you he owns you, punch till you draw blood. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Bye. Join the other sessions.